I want to thank the organizers again, especially the directors of the two institutes and the organizers of this workshop for having invited me. It's my first visit to Marseille. It's really like paradise. Even though I had to go through hell to get here because they were crying babies and chatty families on Ryanair. But as always, you have to go through hell in order to reach paradise. And then that, in fact, is related to what I want to talk about today, which is becoming Buddhist subjects in today's sinophone world or Chinese-speaking societies. That includes mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and overseas Chinese communities. But primarily, I will be speaking about certain Buddhist groups that originated in Taiwan but are influential now, not only in mainland China, but also globally. So I changed the wording a little bit. Instead of calm continence, it's now serene continence, peaceful heart, pure land. Okay, so I assume that most of you are not too familiar with the history of modern Buddhist formation in China. So just a couple minutes. Traditionally, Buddhism was the most important religious traditions in China. But the manifestation of Buddhism, other than the more visible big monasteries and monks in those monasteries, the most important aspect of Buddhism in traditional China was for funerals. So a Buddhist, what I call householders, ritual service providers. Okay, so these are married ritual masters who would put on the Buddhist garb and do the funeral for a family and then take it off after being paid and go back to his family, to his wife and his children, and pass the trade and the skills to one of his sons. And that's how the most important elements of Buddhism is transmitted in traditional China. And today, so after the Maoist period ended, the revival of religion in China is in the form of, yes, temple rebuilding, but also a lot of these ritual service providers, digging out the manuscripts of ritual manuals that they hid away during the Maoist period, and then copying if they already lost them or their copies having been confiscated, and then resuming the service for the common people in the villages where they live. So, but Buddhism faced a tremendous challenge in the late 19th century, early 20th century. So, of course, after the Opium Wars, Western missionaries came in, bringing a lot of new ways of doing religion and bringing in modern education and all that. But the Qing government, the Manchu Qing government, as part of their reform initiatives, asked locals all over the empire to use temple funds to sponsor education. So that actually resulted in a lot of loss of temple property and loss of temple buildings to schools. So that's a struggle that the Buddhists have been fighting in the past 100 years or so. But one important change in the 20th century is the rise of really rich and powerful lay Buddhists. So they were no longer famous monks in major monasteries, but rather really rich sponsors of Buddhism who are business people, who are real estate moguls, who were devotees of Buddhism, but did not become monks. They and their families would be sponsoring the printing of Buddhist sutras and, of course, sponsoring the many travels of Buddhist monks during this really new period. One of the monks that was most famous, and it continues to be very famous today, is Master Taixu, who proposed the reform of the Sangha. So, because he thought all these funeral priests is not proper Buddhism. So he wanted to get rid of all of these householder ritual service providers. Instead, only the Sangha, the monks and the nuns, in his eyes, are proper Buddhists. But at the same time, he wants to cultivate a very large following of lay Buddhists. Not only these rich ones, but also ordinary citizens. So he wanted to turn them into Buddhist citizens. So you have to remember that in the early 20th century, when the Manchu Qing Empire was collapsing, China entered into a new republican period, and basically they were building the nation with very fluid ways of imagining how this nation is going to be like. So in Taixu's mind, because in his mind, most of Chinese people at the time were so deeply imbued with Buddhist concepts and ideas, and therefore, they could become, basically, China could become a Buddhist dominant nation with almost like and of course Chinese people becoming citizens, and they can be Buddhist citizens. So 佛教公民 was the term that he proposed. And that has relevance for us because when we think, how do contemporary Buddhists imagine a dharma utopia, like a utopia based on the Buddha's teachings, we have to imagine at what scale. Is it globally? Is it nationally? Is it regionally? Or only locally? And I think Taixu, more than about 100 years ago, so he was active in the 20s and 30s, he actually already painted a sort of a vision where this Dharma utopia could be achieved at the scale of this at the nation. But at the same time, he was also interacting with a lot of Buddhists in Japan, in Sri Lanka, and there was a pan-Buddhist sort of a global movement going on. Since Olga earlier mentioned pan-Arabism, pan-Islamism, pan-Buddhism at the time was very much in the mix. So we have the radical Maoist era of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Starting in the late 70s and early 80s, the reform period of China, liberalization of the economy and political climate led to huge religious revival in mainland China. And the end of the Cold War as well had an impact on the religious landscape in Taiwan. So starting in the 80s, in 87 they dissolved the military rule, and all kinds of religious revival happened in Taiwan as well. So previously it was quite strictly controlled by the nationalist government on Taiwan. And then of course Chinese people going back and forth in a very globalized world. So there are monks from outside of China who are very influential in China, like Master Jing Kong. But the most important and most visible phenomenon relating to Buddhism is the rise of Buddhist denominations originating in Taiwan. So these are Buddhist organizations with a sizable clerical population, so nuns and monks, but much bigger lay Buddhist following. We are talking about millions of followers in Taiwan and abroad. And I call them denominations because they are all branded Buddhist groups with very strong identities. And therefore, if you join one of these five, you cannot simultaneously participate in activities organized by the other ones. Okay, so so it's becoming more membership-based, exclusivistic, and each with their own teachings and masters and range of activities. I won't spend too much time on this, but in order to join one of these organizations, usually you have to go through the ritual of taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and become what I call a Buddhist subject. So this process of taking in all these different kinds of teachings and gradually cultivating yourself into this body of teaching, that process I call religious subjectification. So quite unlike traditional Chinese practices of going to temples, praying for whatever you need to pray for, and then not caring too much about whether it's Taoist, Buddhist, popular religion, or whatever. So now if you gave them a census and asked them what religion you belong to, even though this question is not on the census in China, they are more likely than before to say Buddhist. They can actually tick a box, whereas previously they would be very confused and nobody would be ticking any boxes, or they tick all of them, just because this religious identity wasn't really a important marker. After they join one of these groups, they acquire a whole body of new language, often specific to not just Buddhism, but that particular group. And you can tell from the language they use which group they belong to. And often they call each other bodhisattvas, 菩萨. And that's a very important term of address. They are co-practitioners in the way of the bodhisattva. Okay, so bodhisattva, as you know, is someone who attained nirvana but decided to stay in this world to transmit the dharma to help more people. And therefore, all of these lay Buddhist devotees now call each other bodhisattva. Okay, I need to speed up a little bit. And in this denominationalism, not only is it membership-based and heavily participatory, it's also very evangelical. So they often convert each other's members. So all are Buddhists already, but you want them to join your denomination or your group. Just like Protestant denominations often have this so-called sheep poaching phenomenon, right? Like because the shepherd is Christ, but also the local minister, and then you poach each other's sheep or congregants. I'll show you a few images of two of the most important groups. One is called Ciji. This nun is the founder, Master Zheng Yan, and the other is Master Xingyun, Fo Guangshan. Master Xingyun just passed away last year. So after you join these groups, you become a Ciji Ren or Fo Guang Ren or Fa Gu Ren. These are important badge of identity, and often if you participate in their activities, each group has their own uniform. So when you go out, do a charity drive or help the victims of earthquake or a disaster, people can immediately identify you as Ciji or Fo Guang or Fa Gu. I won't go into details on these. I'll just show you some pictures. This is Fo Guangshan and Master Xingyun. Headquarters in southern Taiwan, very similar to the new religions you see in Japan that started in the Meiji period and also post-World War II. Fo Guangshan's Buddha Memorial Center, which is really grandiose. Night scene. And all of these masters write a lot. So there are a lot of publications on their transmissions. conversion or taking refuge certificate, poster for taking refuge, and an emphasis on whole family conversion. So it's not just you're an adult, you go to their teachings, and then you decide, oh, I want to take refuge. You're encouraged to bring this Dharma message to your family members, especially to your children. That ensures the growth of the group in the future. And this is the other one, Tzu Ji, with Master Zheng Yan, the really charismatic, very quiet, soft-spoken, but very charismatic nun. I think many of you must have heard of her because her activities are very globalized. So this is a uniform of a Tzu Ji person, uniform of women volunteers, and they have particular hand songs, which is a really Tzu Ji, uniquely Tzu Ji phenomenon. They act out the lyrics of a song with gestures collectively, so that when they do rituals such as this one, you can have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people doing the hand song. Okay, this is a very large ritual based in Taiwan. Their globalization. So they are famous for helping victims of disasters all over the world. And the main message is one's selfless great love, 大爱, versus your own family-based and private love. So 大爱, big love, involves loving strangers, foreigners, all sentient beings suffering because of all kinds of disasters and difficulties. And that's their satellite TV coverage and publications showing their activities. One really important bit of unique gesture is they thank you after they help you. Okay, so say if you're a victim of a disaster, they bring food and tents and everything, but they will thank you because you actually gave them the chance to do good and cultivate his or her karmic merit, okay, or accrue more karmic merit. So why serene countenance, peaceful heart? So this is this I guess can be reduced to unperturbability. Yeah? You're supposed to be carrying yourself in the world with an unperturbed and unperturbable heart, and you always wear this sort of serene, with slight smile on your face, just like many of the Buddha images or Bodhisattva images in sculptures. So it's cultivating a kind of mind that's not distracted, distressed, stimulated, unhappy, or happy. Yeah. So you're not supposed to have ups and downs. You're supposed to be just calm and serene and unperturbed. So you might want to ask, but isn't that like dead people? Yeah, like who's calm? Dead people are calm. And where can you find this serenity? Cemeteries. So that reminds me of what Foucault said about cemeteries, heterotopia, where, I mean, in German it's Friedhof, yeah, like peace. You go into a Western cemetery. Chinese cemeteries are not like that. They're a little creepy. But you go to a Western cemetery, you can have calm. Of course, it's not for you. It's for the deceased, and peace is for those deceased people's souls, right? And so you might want to say, but isn't that sort of cultivating something that's a little bit too close to death? Yeah? But it's not. Because of this active component in the whole way of the bodhisattva. Right? You're not just being calm; you are actually transforming your surroundings with this serenity, so that the whole your family, your workplace, your neighborhood, your community will be transformed into a similarly serene world, and that pure land on earth. Okay, so this is what renjianfojiao or Buddhism for this world is about, transforming this world into this dharma utopia. So think of this vitamin tablet you're putting in a glass of water. Once you put it in, it bubbles, and then the whole glass transforms into that that color. You know, whether it's orange or yellow or pink. So that's the transformative power these lay devotees should bring to the world. Lastly, because we are in France, I just want to introduce one phenomenon, which is the Esplanade des Religions et Cultures in Bussy Saint-Georges. You must have heard of this. This is a utopian project where different religions are supposed to coexist side by side in a sort of like a theme park way, but they are actually active religious establishments. So you have a mosque, a synagogue, a Theravada Buddhist temple, a Mahayana Foguangshan temple, and what else? And a couple of other religions. Anyone has visited Bussy Saint-Georges? It's in the so that's Paris, and then it's about 40 minutes away. So next time you go to Paris, make a trip to this place. It's so vivre sa foi dans la paix et l'harmonie. So it's very much a utopic vision.
Interesting. I just googled the first picture was with ducks, and the second Disneyland.
Ducks?
This ducks just if I Google.
Yeah.
The first picture came out with ducks.
Really?
And the second Disneyland.
Snails. Disneyland. Oh yeah. Okay. I see. Yes. It's very much. Yeah. So basically, the local council gave them a piece of land, and then one by one, religious organizations are invited to establish their church or temple or mosque there. And this is the Foguangshan branch in the Bussy Saint-Georges. Very busy center. In fact, they all of the people running it are Foguangshan nuns. And there's a Chinese person sharing social media. It says, in Paris, translating into English, it would be in the urban area of Paris. There's actually Taoyuan means paradise area, like referring to it as paradise. So I think I will end there. Thank you very much.